Hi, I'm Helene Gayle, President and CEO of CARE, and I'm here this evening interviewing Nick Kristof about the book that he and his wife wrote called Half the Sky. Nick, tell me, why'd you write the book?
You know, it was really a long time in the works. I guess if you really go back, it was when we lived in China and we covered the Tiananmen Square killings. But then we realized that every year there were about 39,000 Chinese baby girls that were being killed because they didn't have the same access to food and healthcare as boys. And we hadn't given them one column inch of attention. And it kind of made us begin to see development through the prism of gender. And once you, as you know better than I, once you begin to look through that prism, then it's astonishing how relevant it is.
Tell me about the title, Half the Sky. What's the significance of it?
Well, the truth is we had just an incredibly difficult time figuring out what the title should be. We were a little afraid people would think it was an astronomy book, but it comes from a Chinese expression, ban bian tian, that women hold up half the sky. And indeed, that's obviously an aspiration more than a reality, but you know, if we want to fight poverty and extremism, as you know very well, then that is the most productive, that's the best route to do that, to help women indeed hold up their half of the sky.
Yeah, and I also think it gets across the message that, in fact, it is half the world, and if we are holding back half the world's potential, you know, we're really losing a lot. And I think that message, in some ways, comes across more than sometimes talking about it as a rights issue or talking about it as a gender issue. But I think when people get that, the math of it.
That's right. I mean, I think that here in this country, often the human rights argument really strikes people. But in other countries, especially those that tend to have the biggest gender problems, my sense is that the argument that really carries the day is that they can grow faster, they can be more stable if they educate girls, bring them into the formal economy.
Yeah, you know, you have some pretty moving stories in there. Talk about a couple of those and why those particular stories. I know you saw a lot of women and girls in your journeys, so why the particular stories that you wrote about?
It's our sense that people are sometimes afraid, scared off from development because the stories are scary. And so we wanted to show that there is hope and that there are people who may have faced really terrible things, but they have overcome them, and that with a little bit of help, they can do that. One of the cases we write about that is close to home is a woman in Burundi, which at the time was the poorest country in the world, a woman called Goretti, and she had been enrolled in a CARE program. This is a woman who had never even been allowed to touch money. I mean, she was not allowed to leave the home without her husband's permission. Her husband, Bernard, was beating her all the time. And she was a completely squandered asset. And then she got a $2 loan through CARE, and she used it to buy fertilizer to put on her potato crop. She had a great crop of potatoes, sold it, then she upped the ante and started a little banana beer business. So she gradually began kind of multiplying her presence into being the banana beer magnate, goat farmer. And Bernard was clearly very wary about this, but then at one point he got malaria. And the only way his hospital bill could be paid was with the money that Goretti was earning. And all of a sudden he began to see women's empowerment in a new light and realized he could be a beneficiary as well. It doesn't always work that smoothly, as you know, but when it works, it is just so exciting to see how not only do you have one individual whose life is transformed, but it is of huge benefit to the community, to the country, to the men. People sometimes think it's a kind of male versus female gender war. I mean, the men are huge beneficiaries when the women work as well.
Yeah, it's really a catalyst for change in many ways.
That's right. The metaphor that I always like for aid, you know, when it works right, is a little drop of oil and kind of the crankcase of development. And you know, with it, then things begin to work normally, and then you've got a virtuous cycle. And indeed, in that case, Goretti is now educating her daughters.
You've talked about our Care Action Network from time to time. It's a way of people getting involved. Why is it important for individuals to get involved, particularly in the policy arena?
Right. In general, my sense is that our leaders never really lead on moral questions. They essentially follow. And that the way to get them to act is to hold their feet to the fire. And that the way to hold their feet to the fire is to go to care.org and get on the Care Action Network and make those calls and make it clear that this is something that voters care about.
Yeah, I guess in a way we give them cover to do the things that many of them would like to do, but maybe wouldn't be willing to step out there on their own and do it.
They want to get calls from constituents telling them
exactly.
to, because that will, as you say, give them cover.
Yeah. This book, it looks like it's going to be a real success. Are you surprised that there's been so much attention to it?
Certainly in the publishing world, there was some skepticism that a do-gooder book about some really pretty tough things would have commercial appeal. So the day it hit the New York Times bestseller list, that was very reassuring that there is a broad audience for this. I think that reflects a real tipping point out there because of the groundwork that CARE has done, that so many other organizations all around the country have done, and that the mood is changing, that these are really being recognized now. This issue, the time has come.
Right. You're an author, obviously. As an author, you want your book to do well. But beyond that, what is it that you really hope that this book will accomplish?
We really would love to see people move from reading the book to then taking action of some kind. And this sounds very kind of grand and ambitious, but we'd love to see more of a social movement on these issues. Our sense is that the way you really get far-reaching change on these kinds of issues isn't just from top-down action. It's from a broad social movement, a grassroots movement. And there is a chance for that happening here. There's one in the works, and if we can give it a little bit of support, a little bit of a nudge, that would be great. We started also a website, halftheskymovement.org, and ideally we'd like to develop it also as a forum where people can talk about things they can do to really get involved.
It's hard to say whether it's going to happen, but I think if anyone can help create a movement and help ignite that kind of passion and excitement, I think it's you and the book that you've written. So I, as well as so many other people, thank you and Cheryl for what you've done to help to catalyze that kind of action.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's your people who are out in the field in places like Burundi or Afghanistan, really difficult places, who are just carrying that load daily, and I'm in awe of them. And if we can help shine a light on some of their work, it's great.